X, on Rumble. I'm here with Sabby Reyes Kulkarni, the apostate music journalist. I'm James Brown. This is Media Studies. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Hello, James.
So, momentous week in media. This is like the Super Bowl for me. This is awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say we couldn't go through this week with these like major headlines hitting without commentary from you. I'm chomping at the bit to hear what your take on this is, because especially since we had Stephen Colbert or the FS1 news and Stephen Colbert news hit, a couple days apart.
Mm-hmm. Don't leave out NPR.
Okay, that too. Just from the layperson's perspective, it's easy to read a lot of symbolism that this is indicative of some sort of sea change. And the first thing I thought of was, well, if that's exaggerated, then James will splash cold water on that interpretation.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's not indicative of a sea change. I think it is indicative of a sea change, but not necessarily the sea change that people think. I think the broad strokes of it is, and I see this as all one big story. I think there have been gravy trains in the media world that have come to an end or are coming to an end for many media outlets. Late night TV was a gravy train. Just to bring up, just go to Colbert a bit. That's the NPR article, but let's go to Colbert a bit.
Real risk to the safety of the country. Wow. Sorry, right. I just saw that. I'm just reacting to the slide you just showed.
But we can even go back there.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So this is Catherine Maher, the CEO of NPR, argued that losing public broadcasting, losing $1 billion of public broadcasting. So we're not even talking about their full budgets here. Just $1 billion of public broadcasting money a year is a real risk to public safety of the country.
Translation. Don't cut my gravy train.
Yes, it's an insane statement. Look, I'll give you my position on it. And I say this as a person who's cashed checks both locally and nationally from NPR and from PBS. I like the programming. I think they do a good job for what they do. There's no constitutional responsibility for the American people to pay for a media company. None. It's been a gravy train that has existed since the 1960s. When we were a much more affluent nation, we decided that we are going to pay to have public broadcasting across this country. That's what we decided in the Johnson era, that this was a thing that we were going to create. There is good that has come from it. I think a lot of good from it. Some of my heroes were public broadcasters: Jim Lehrer, Bill Moyers, for example, Gwen Ifill, another one. People who I truly respect, who came through that system, who we probably wouldn't get in the form that we got them if they were in any other system. But there's no responsibility for the American public to pay for it. That was a choice. That's a choice that's made every year. And at some point, that was going to end. And I think what happened was you had a world that was insulated, a world that where they could go off and do their own, that got increasingly to the left, that fed into itself and thought that they were entitled to this money. Mm-hmm. They were never entitled. We're not entitled to anything.
Not just to the money, but the influence. And
I tend to agree with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And look, I think the influence, actually, this could work out great for them. And if they're smart, it will. But there's a question with this and these other these other two stories that they all have to answer, which is, do people actually want this content?
Or is it paying? Yes, and is it profiting their networks?
No.
Okay.
Yes, you could make that argument, but it will. But I think the broader question is, do people want this?
Mm.
People like the idea of these things, but do people actually want them?
Yeah, are they
Are they willing to pay
vestiges?
for them?
And are they vestiges of the way? Are they around simply because we used to do things this way, and they're sort of like holographic memories almost? You said something about this almost 10 years ago when that last Tribe Called Quest album was out. You said something that when we talked about it back then, you said, well, is it really moving the needle as much, or is it just that the people who like to talk about these things like to talk about things like this? And I feel like that's sort of where we're at with this whole paradigm that appears to be, I don't know if dying is the right way to diagnose it,
Yeah.
but it's got to change or else it's going to die.
The audience for all of these three products, and this is just the first of the three, has been shrinking. Fewer, from what we know of and we don't have a full picture of the public broadcasting thing. That's part of it. They haven't needed to, they have been insulated by this public funding, so they don't have to. So whether someone actually watches something or listens to something was not of paramount importance. It was that the American people were paying for this concept to exist. So it didn't matter if people really wanted to hear classical music in every corner of the country. It was like, hey, we think classical music should be in every corner of the country, and we're gonna give a chunk of the American budget to pay for it.
Yeah, it was the sense that like once you have that money coming from the government, you don't have to show your analytics, you don't have to inventory your actual sort of net worth. You can then just flip it and say, well, this is for the erudition of the American people.
Mhm.
We're vital because who
Yes.
said? Because we said so.
Yes.
Because you let us be. So now we're going to say that, we not only have the right to exist, but we need to exist.
Yes. Yes.
We need to exert this influence. And you said the leftist ideological slant. I would be more precise on that and say a a, a distortion of affluent progressive politics gone sort of haywire is what NPR started, and of the New York Times and the New Yorker and so many of these other outlets, Vox and New York Mag, and uh, all started sliding into this really affluent, privileged funhouse version of progressive ideals.
And I think the biggest difference between public media and the rest of it is that they are getting massive amounts of money from the American government to do it. And I can see a rationale for saying, hey, we're no longer in a time of great affluence. We're at a time where hey, the budget is going to have to be squeezed. And yes, whether you are on the left or the right, it doesn't really matter. It's the math. We're not going to be able to support Social Security as it is and other more vital services if we don't condense our budget over at some point over the next decade. We're going to have to do it. And what's going to have to happen in that case is we're going to lose some nice to haves. And this was what this has always been. It's been a nice to have, not a must. And what's happened in terms of NPR funding, and Catherine Marr, who made that quote that we're seeing on the screen, has said this, is that the bulk of NPR funding won't be affected by this. We're talking 95% of their funding will stay the same. What we are going to see, and it's going to be rough, is that we're going to see some local affiliates, I don't think go under, but I think we're going to see them trim back. we're going to probably see less reporters, less public radio reporters in around the country, for better or worse. It's not I don't think that's a clear bad thing or a clear good thing. I think obviously we're gonna have some jobs lost, and that sucks. But it's gonna we're gonna see less of it, less expansionism from that world, at least in the short term. I think in an actual long term, I think this actually will end up benefiting them because all the energy and time and effort that they've been putting into lobbying the federal government to give them money and keep this slice of their funding, they could actually put into building revenue streams. Revenue streams that are not tied to politics. Or at least government politics, because I think it would be tied to politics, but not government politics.
I was going to ask you if some, I'm always wary of these arguments, these absolutist arguments that free market just solves everything. But I wonder if the pressures of having to compete for your bread and butter won't actually help an institution like this.
I believe it will.
Yeah, like what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, but just this idea that, well, there's nothing like deserved. It's just go out and get it, kind of a thing, and be out there in the exactly, and go out there and compete like other media institutions have to, and think about profits and losses. You've been saying for again almost a decade now, you were always skeptical, I think, of the idea that the government should be the primary benefactor, for lack of a better word, of public radio.
Well, broader than that, I don't think the government should be in the media business. And I think what we see, and I think around the country, we see a demonization of the people in government, mostly on the right side of the aisle, who have been against funding public media, and we've seen a lionization of the people on the aisle who have been for public media funding on public media. And it makes sense, of course, because it's not just the sensibility that comes with the programming. Put that aside. You had one side of the aisle screaming that public media needs to exist. It should be fully funded. It should get more funding. And the other side of the aisle saying that public media isn't. And these are people. Half of these people, let's just say broadly, are saying, hey, we shouldn't pay for you. The other half is saying, hey, we should pay for you. Is that going to have a bias baked into what you do?
Yeah, I think what they want is to have a publicly funded sense of security, that their worldview is anchored somehow to the government, and that it's just a feeling of like, well, this emanates from Washington, D.C., and somehow that means Washington, D.C. is more in alignment with what I want the world, the way I want to see the world. And that's really it's just for people to feel good that public broadcasting reflects my values.
And I think that's that's an interesting point there. I think that's the question here. Like there was a clip I saw of a station I used to work with, WXXI. They were marching through our Pride Parade here in Rochester, and there was this chant, PBS, 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 and it's like it's not that all members of the gay community are lefties. I'd say most that I've encountered,
but certainly not all.
And not all.
And not all members of the gay community are want to be lumped in with trans and
yes.
It's not what it's
it's a more especially the more people you meet, the more complicated and interesting the community is. Like
Sure.
it's been one of the interesting things about growing up and meeting a bunch of different people. You'll find like, oh, like there are layers here. That's
Oh
really
my God.
interesting.
I mean, what NPR would present as quote unquote trans doesn't reflect even close to the variety, even in that
Yeah,
realm. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
there's all sorts of different stripes politically and ideologically under all those different umbrellas. But NPR would have us look at it as just one big tent.
Yes, it oversimplifies.
Oh, yeah.
And look, you kind of have to.
Not to that
You could argue
great
it's
degree, though.
it's an exaggeration, or it's at least it's done to an extreme. But like but you kind of have to overgeneralize. Um, but I guess my point is like
PBS.
my point is like there's this is it's not a constitutional concern. It's an ideological concern. And I think it's an ideological concern that's finally going to we're going to finally find out how popular this programming is. And it's going to actually face the market. And there's going to be wild opportunities for experimentation and growth. And I think there are levels upon levels of monetization that they haven't done yet because they knew they were getting the government gravy chain coming in. So I think while it will be a rough few years, and those people chanting PBS, 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 they're pissed. But I think it's quite possible that they may end up getting a better service. And they may actually get a service that is free to go as far left as they want without worrying about explaining yourself to the U.S. government. Go do it.
But is that a better service, though?
For their audience.
Because
you could argue that from my perspective, not really. Like I like a more balanced perspective. I want to hear, but in terms of their core audience,
well, that's what they want. I was going to say I would feel like a better service, a healthier service, would be to have not the counter perspectives enough that it would edify their audience and expand their audience to be less tunnel visioned. I mean, you don't ask an alcoholic who's at the bar, at noon. You don't say, though, that's a better service if you could just keep serving me what I want, what I'm addicted to, versus, well, why don't you have something else with that, or something non-alcoholic, or a meal, or a salad, or something instead. You see what I'm saying? Like, I get you. Like, this is what they want. They could get more of what they want, but I'm wondering if it goes that way, they're getting less of what they need. They're getting an exaggeration of an exaggeration.
What I think that's a very Pollyanna look at the existing media landscape. What media gives its audience consistently what they need?
I mean, I guess there are more places, not the bigger places.
I'm talking about the bigger places because that's where we're at here.
Yeah, but the bigger places appear to be stumbling now. Not necessarily from this, because you're going to explain why we're where we are in the bigger picture. I feel like, could you be anticipating where the market could go if you start paying attention to this growing exhaustion with ideological uniformity, wherever you're getting it from? Maybe you would argue people are not exhausted from this, but
no, I think
is there a growing?
I think it's an interesting question there, because I think there's this simultaneous thing going on where yes, I do think a chunk of the population is very tired of the ideological, um, uh, uniformity, and then there's the other side that is really, really they're used to social media algorithms that are giving them more of what they love
Oh, sure. I mean, they're
and
the
what it.
alcoholics of my model. They're full. They don't want. I mean, just as a tiny example, is there a more uh, obvious way to telegraph exactly where you stand on everything by just saying you have blue sky?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
sure.
Like, so
I mean,
yes.
that's in a whole episode unto itself. I mean, look, what we've seen is that, like, we've seen this exodus, and look, the downside of where X is now, X has gone much further right than it used to be. There used to be more of a fight and more of a discourse. Now there's a lot less of that. And
Mhm.
that's not good either. But what's happened is a lot of those people, like you said, like on the left side of the aisle, slid over to blue sky because they didn't want any of the nonsense and any of the some of the wildness that Elon's let in. I mean, you know, like there's crazy porn bots. There's like I get spammed with like Bitcoin people, and I think these are all Bitcoin bots. I think like there's all this stuff that that Elon let in the door that does not fit the sensibility of these folks. So what they did, they created their own echo chamber that that is on the other side of extreme. So
Sure.
the question I think is, and I think it's the same question for Blue Sky. I think that NPR is that how can it generate enough of an audience consistently to support itself? And we don't know, especially with PBS. We don't know because they haven't really had to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm that's I wonder about this because you mentioned the classical music for what is it, 4 hours a day on public broadcasting, or because they
No,
have
no,
an
I mean
AM
some places it's 24 hours a day.
because they have the AM affiliate that does mostly music, right? Mostly classical, and then they
I mean, you talk about locally.
just the sort of general model.
Well, if
One of them is more
if
talk
you're
oriented.
talking nationwide, I mean, there's many places where it is 24-hour classical music with a few news breaks.
And my question is, how many people? What chunk of the audience? By the way, can you hear the baby screaming in the
Yes,
background?
yes, I can.
Okay. I'm gonna mute my microphone when I'm done. So sorry about that. Um, how many people? What chunk of the population wants that? No, I'm not saying we should get rid of classical music stations, but it's very much a holdover of okay, this is what like a civilized society, this is what an educated
Mhm,
society needs. It reminds me of Fidel Castro when he took power. He wanted to make sure everybody knew the classics of Russian literature. So he wanted the whole country to be literate, which was a step like a new thing for Cuba. But he wanted to make sure they had a background in like Russian classical
mhm,
literature and theater. Wanted to make sure everybody played an instrument and everybody played a sport. And I remember running that by somebody I was with at the time, and she said that's a very bourgeois idea of of what people like. That's definitely a bourgeois concept of what life should look like. And I was like, oh yeah, because we tend to think of him as this super revolutionary figure, but he's even borrowing from like an upper class mentality and thinking that that's a good thing. And you get the same thing with jazz and with classical. I'm not saying these forms should die, but there's such an air of highbrow
mhm.
and such an air of we know we're the last few people talking about this stuff in this way, but we're going to pretend the whole world still does, right? Like in like the way they talk on the air, it's as if everybody was interested in this, right? They don't make a distinction between like they're talking about Taylor Swift and they're talking about some classical composer that barely anybody on the street can name, for better or worse. They give them the same importance, but they're feeling like, okay, this is an exclusive thing that the privileged class gets to sort of hold on to. It's such a strange psychology. And then the other side of it, you've got Grok having a psychotic episode.
Yeah. I mean, that man, that's an episode unto itself. Like that, but look, the brave new world we're going into is not like it's got its own issues, but
I'll
we're going.
say, yeah, we're not only going, we're there. We're being dragged into it.
Yeah, and I think that fits my whole larger thesis here, in that, like, I think these places are being dragged into the now.
Yeah, so that's where you're saying this is the same story?
Yes.
Or tentacles of the same.
Yes. There are variations on the same theme. It's the decisions that were made at least a decade ago, if not longer, that had a shelf life, but they didn't realize it. Or they should have realized it and they didn't pivot in time. And I think that while NPR, the mothership, has, Catherine Marr's words, made efforts to get funding from other sources, throughout their network, they did not. And the fact that they didn't is, I think, criminal, but at least ethically. And there should have been. You should have seen this coming, not just from the whole Trump thing, but from the broader governmental issue. Like you can't depend on the government to in perpetuity support you. I think that, especially not to the tune of $1 billion plus a year.
Okay, but we're seeing similarly minded missteps from corporations that are not government funded, that you would think are motivated by profit, and they also are stumbling. I was going to ask you about the Colbert thing. Would have been more obvious.
You want to go Colbert first?
Yeah, because Colbert is a product of people wanting to lampoon who they think conservatives are, and like a major TV network thinking you can broadcast out to all of America while telling half of America that they're stupid and reprehensible.
Well, that's one way to look at it.
And having this guy be sort of like the hood ornament for that. Not to say that he wasn't funny as fuck back in the day, you know what I mean? Like I thought he was legitimately funny when he was playing that character. Because I kind of initially thought he was laughing at himself too, but that might be just me reading into it. But I'm shocked, but not surprised that a corporation that exists ostensibly to make profit and keep itself profitable would go this path. Like they completely misread. There was certainly a market for this, but cutting off half your potential market was just not a very good business model, or a terrible business model.
I'd back up a moment.
Okay.
So you see the screen?
The Late Show, a fixture of the network for over 3 decades, was racking up losses of tens of millions of dollars a year, and the gap was growing fast, according to 2 people familiar with the show's finances. Like other late-night shows before it, The Late Show was canceled when the network could not figure out how to make the finances work in an entertainment world increasingly dominated by streaming.
I think, similarly to NPR, the late-night television was a creation in an affluent era. An era where you could lavishly spend $100 million a year on a late night show. And just the idea, the prestige of having a late night show was enough. It didn't really matter if it made money or not. It didn't really matter. Carson did. Letterman and Leno did. Conan O'Brien did for a while too. But
until when? Until how? Until when?
I really, we're talking. These really took a nosedive. I'd say as we approached COVID.
Oh, okay. So fairly recently.
Yeah, where it made money, but they were still, a lot of these were breaking even. I was listening to this really interesting podcast on it with called The Town. They were interviewing a guy who used to work on James Corden's show.
Okay.
And worked on Leno and worked on Conan. And he detailed going back at least a decade and a half of just like increasingly having budget pressures. Having a TV show with somewhat, from what I saw, around 200 staffers to produce an hour of TV in an era where we could click a button and go on for a half hour with two of us is insanity. It's a vestige of an old era. That staff probably should have been 20. They were paying for 200.
So when you say it was enough to the network, you're saying these were almost like vanity.
They are. I mean, that's what Jimmy Kimmel is. That's what Jimmy Fallon is. These are vanity ornaments, vanity plates.
To keep the illusion of the previous television age intact?
I wouldn't say illusion of the previous television age. I'd say these people existed in roles. Well, I think that's part of it, because I do think that the whole Carson, Letterman, Leno, but their value is not calculated strictly in how much they make a year. Their value is having a guy to host the Oscars for us.
Wow.
Having a guy who will who we can send our movie stars to go talk to. So that we could send him to Good Morning America. We could send him to the Kelly Ripa show. We could send him to the Good Morning America afternoon show. We could send him to ESPN, and we could send him into our late night. You know what I mean? Like, to having this, the idea, the placement, that's the way it was calculated. It wasn't so much a make money, not make money. Every few years, they were like, they'd look at it and like, oh yeah, we need to actually make some money. But like, they weren't all loss leaders.
I was just going to say almost loss leaders, but I didn't want to interrupt
almost.
you. Yeah.
News was seen as a loss leader. Like, they didn't care about news budgets into the late 90s. Like, CBS News in particular, that's the fabled one where it's like 60 Minutes would make so much money and they wouldn't care because it was just off in its own universe, and they wouldn't care about, whether it wins and loss. They were doing a public service. This is what they were discussing. And as things changed, as the media landscape evolved, that became much less of a problem, much less of an idea. And they started analyzing, like, okay, how much are we spending on X and Y and Z? I think this is a lot there's a lot of reasons why we don't have as many foreign bureaus for these news operations anymore. And it's because things cost a lot of money. Like, and so everybody sort of scaled back. But these were, it was less about having a highly profitable enterprise, and more about having a host that is sort of the hooded ornament for our network.
Yeah, sort of the face of the franchise, so to speak.
Yes.
Or the TV equivalent of that.
Yes.
And also, during the Carson I guess Carson was the reigning one, and then it was Letterman and Leno or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah, they were a duo.
Right. But first it was just Carson dominating. So
making tons of money.
Going from that into Leno, Letterman.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Oscars, right? It's like we are an industry. We created this thing that used to have enormous cultural import. And even as we can see that slipping away, we want to maintain the illusion of this thing we created because it's a hallmark of what the influence our industry once had. So it just starts to become more sort of going around in circles, pretending that you are still in that old world. Because I mean, the rhythm, the vibe of late night talk shows, it's essentially the same as it always was, right? It has a certain sparkle to it that even I find very enticing, even though I don't really care that much. There's just a certain like formula to it that feels familiar because you and I have been exposed to this since before we could talk. We heard that in the background, that crowd sound, the background, like the thing with the city in the background or the Hollywood Hills or whatever. The way they talk to each other, the condensed, the conversations, the laughter, the jokes, all of that feels very familiar. And this brings up bigger questions to me about how long we hang on to things, whether we're individuals or whether we're big giant corporations or big giant institutions, much to our own detriment.
I think there's a larger discussion on that. I think in the case of these people, I think it's like, and I think this connects to the NPR element, and this connects to the FS1 element, where it's we like the idea of something more than we actually like this thing.
I mean, we
more than we
really
actually support the thing. More than we actually consume the thing.
Yes.
So, my guess, this is my prediction about Colbert. Colbert's ratings are going to go through the freaking roof for the next 10 months. They're going to go through the roof. All right? He's been around 2 million viewers for the last few years. Just to give you a flavor, Letterman and Leno were around 6, 5, a night. Leno and Letterman eventually got down to about 3, 3.5, 4. And then, everything's chopped down, But what's going to happen is that everybody's going to flock to this guy to hear him rant about Trump and hear him rant about being fired. He's got nothing to lose now. And it's going to be interesting. And all of a sudden, there's going to be all this attention. And then when he's gone, nobody's going to care.
That I hadn't thought about that, and he will feed into this idea that we're hanging on to the last dying embers of our. He'll probably feed into like a circle the wagons mentality. Like there's not much of an opportunity for us to share this kind of time together where we're all sharing the same ideas and the same way of looking at the world. That's a really interesting point that we like the idea of something even more than we consume the actual thing, because look at how much sports highlights get aggregated by people who don't watch the actual games or even fantasy and all that stuff. Like there's all this activity around sports, and yet yes, live sports still do very healthy numbers, but so many more people are not actually watching. And there's also an element here I want to ask you about, where we talk about this a lot. You've said this before, like there's nothing new under the sun. Like the more things change, the more they stay the same. Outside of the ideological aspects here, isn't it just true of business that business grows until it makes itself obsolete, because so much of the time businesses, they step out on a limb and create a new market, but then keep on going on the assumption that the foundation they built is going to keep standing indefinitely,
Without a
and
doubt.
they refuse to adapt even as that's being undercut from underneath them.
Yeah.
So I mean, are we really even seeing much of a new or even contemporary? Yes, there's a contemporary flavor to this with streaming and
Oh,
political
yeah.
polarization,
This
but
show.
is
Like this show. Rogan. Yeah, we're seeing both. Where these things have their own lifeline. Their lifetime. And different concepts and ideas, they last. And they either evolve or they die. And that's whether it's part of a business or whether it was a piece of art, or whatever. Like they evolve or they die. And what's happened is that we can go on here at the click of a button. That the idea of a talk show has the daytime talk show and the late night talk show. And I remember at one point there was a primetime talk show, which went obsolete at one point. You know, Ed Sullivan, Steve Allen,
yeah.
these were all primetime talk show hosts, and they disappeared. And daytime talk shows have been withering for decades.
Hmm.
And what we're seeing is this happening in the late night now. I think they both had different levels of leverage, which have kept them alive longer. Late night talk shows, because they were a hood ornament, they were able to leverage their lifespan, have a longer lifespan than these other places.
I mean,
Yeah, we're seeing just an evolution. We're seeing that Rogan, that Diary of a CEO. I was watching that show recently. That Call Her Daddy is just an amalgam of your late night talk show, your daytime talk show, and your primetime talk show, and
with a
your
little bit
radio
of
show.
and yes, definitely that, and also with a little bit of like internet lo-fi ish kind of aesthetic thrown in there too. But
On
even
demand.
but you're right, because they also emulate a lot of the visual cues. It's
Mhm.
almost like they're trying to recreate a lot of those shows. The talk show
There's nothing new under the
atmosphere.
sun.
So it's just like right. This brings up a larger question, which I hadn't thought about this at all. Because while you were talking about these networks, I was like, man, previous businesses. So we go back to print media, but also all sorts of businesses like software, the automobile industry, the railroads before that. There's so many places you and I as outside observers can say, why didn't they adapt?
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if, like, I was thinking, well, maybe it became the culture of their business to presume that they had a lane to thrive in no matter what. But then I wonder if it's just not human nature, if we just hang on to things, like even when everything's telling you, dude, swerve over or you're going to fall off a cliff. You can't keep going this way. I wonder how much is just human nature to hang on until you can't anymore for anything. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about this in a media context, in a corporate business context, and in a cultural context. But I wonder if this is just not the story, period. Right? Because like, how do businesses, like if you were sitting in a boardroom or like in the COO's office or shoes, or CFO, excuse me, office, like I think you could predict a lot of these things like a
Yeah.
decade prior, right? But they don't until it's too late, it seems.
Interesting. And this is an aside, but I think it's one that's worth it. Another podcast I watch a lot is All In.
Okay.
These are like 4 tech bros who are all CEOs. One guy was an early investor in Facebook. Another guy, a couple, they're venture capitalists. And they were talking about Apple.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about how this is happening to Apple right now.
Whoa.
Apple is struggling with AI.
Who we presumed Apple was going to last because they've lasted so long. I don't know about if you presumed, but I presumed they were basically indestructible at this point. Uh-huh.
Apple is struggling with AI. Apple is struggling to innovate.
And their name is almost synonymous with innovation, right?
Yeah, they were for a couple decades. And at this point, what was the last innovative Apple product that you've heard of?
That's a very good question. It was the iPhone. It's the iPhone, basically.
It was the iPhone, the iPad, maybe the Apple Watch, maybe. but if you go after that, if you go after that, I mean, what? And so what's happened is they've gotten expert at leeching money off of their customers. I pay them a fee every month to protect my phone, and they give me some extra storage. All right, they're leeching off of me. All right, they've gotten to the subscription game heavy. All right, they're no longer innovating, and I think it's
the public radio model in a different way.
Yes, so it is a natural path that businesses go on. Some it's a longer path, some it's a shorter path, and an Apple is at this point in its history certainly there, where they have no longer grown and changed. They're not changing the business. I was watching an analysis of Apple and Apple's philosophy on products. Their job, at least this is what Steve Jobs back in the day wanted, was to create a product to destroy the last product.
Their own last product.
Yeah. So they created the iPhone to destroy the laptop. They tried the laptop to destroy the desktop to destroy the laptop, the phone to destroy the laptop. And their idea was we're going to create the iPad, and the iPad will replace the iPhone, and the Apple Watch. That was the whole path, that they were going to create the next grand innovation to replace the next thing.
In essence, compete with themselves in a way, to outcompete themselves before anybody else did it.
Yes, and it stopped.
Of course, it did. I mean, isn't that like kind of a no-brainer that wasn't going to work forever?
Yeah. And I think this is where your analysis fits perfectly. That's what's happened with all of these media outlets. Like, if you do not evolve, the New York Times, we're looking at a New York Times article here. They've evolved. I got to give them much credit. They have figured out how to make money. It's not through news, but they figured out how to make money.
You said that they were going in this direction. Again, I got to give you credit. 10 years ago, you said they were moving towards this model, and you predicted also
brand.
You predicted they would survive. Also,
yes, they're a lifestyle brand, and this is what NPR should do: become a lifestyle brand. They already are.
They already are. They just won't admit it. Yeah, they
lean into it.
They're a lifestyle brand. I was going to say in disguise, but the only one buying the disguise is them. Nobody else. It's like somebody walking into a room with a huge plastic mask, not realizing they're wearing a plastic mask. Like, dude, you're a lifestyle brand. Like, just own it. Right?
Yeah. We know what an NPR listener, the archetypal NPR listener is. We know their rough belief structure.
Not rough. Pretty precisely, actually.
Lean into it, NPR. Catherine, if you want to grow your business, and that's what you should be focused on, is growing your business. It's not a charity. It's not a nonprofit. It's a business. What you should do is lean into it. Be a lifestyle brand.
So I have a question before we get to FS1. Why
Yep.
can't they just hire Stephen Colbert?
They could. They
Why? I
probably
mean,
should. I don't think my bet is probably Netflix, but or I could see maybe pairing them with John Oliver on
oh
Max
god, oh my god,
on
that would be
HBO.
horrible.
But yeah, that would make total sense.
I
It would
mean, they
make
should be.
total sense for him to be an NPR host, to have an NPR podcast, a digital slash, radio show.
That
Maybe
also has a
yeah,
video component.
maybe on PBS too.
Yeah, yeah, that has a visual component. Just keep the talk show thing going, sort of in their style. Like bring back like a Tavis Smiley kind of vibe. Is
Yeah, you could
instead.
do that.
You
Or have him do like a wait, don't tell me, that kind of thing. And
mm.
where he's in front of a live audience, which he loves. And he's got free reign and no, like he doesn't have to worry about the government because the government's no longer funding you.
And I mean, aren't we seeing the writing on the wall with these streaming platforms? And we've lived through so much change just even over the last 10, 15 years. Aren't they already sort of running risks and in certain ways pricing themselves out, sort of? I mean, that's a whole separate discussion, but just in terms of the like you said Netflix, aren't they feeling problems, and HBO Max and everything, these rumblings of shakeups? Even they caused a huge shakeup. They sort of dethroned cable and broadcast, or cable dethroned broadcast TV, then they dethroned cable. But aren't they sort of now squeezing their own blood supply in some ways? Can you touch on that real quick?
I don't. Different ones have different problems.
Okay.
So Netflix has reached scale, and I'll run through them all. Netflix has reached such a scale that I don't think they have a problem at all. They don't even see the other streamers as a competitor. They see their competitor as YouTube.
Okay. Well.
All right. So, like, I don't think they're so far ahead. All the other streamers, I don't think that's an issue for them at all.
For now,
I think,
right?
For now. So what they're trying to do is figure out how to integrate talk shows, how to become the cable bundle unto itself, is what they're going for.
Or the new iteration of the cable.
New iteration of it, cable in the movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to integrate podcasting. They want to do live TV, not so much because of their viewers watch live TV. In fact, the live stuff that they have on their TV, unless it's sports, they don't watch it live. They have taught their audience so well that you could come and watch the thing whenever you want to watch the thing, that you could say, "Oh, it's live," and unless it's football,
boxing, or
boxing,
yeah,
they're not coming. I am going to watch Netflix, my murder documentary on Netflix, when I want to watch my murder documentary on Netflix.
Okay, but isn't that the same thing you're talking about with like these networks who wanted the talk show, the vestige of the talk show? Like, aren't they doing? Isn't Netflix doing sort of the same thing?
But their major problem is 20 years down the line.
Right, they're at the beginning of their
or 10 years down the line. It might be faster. Not sure. I think it's too much, not quite sure. I think it depends on how the whole home entertainment thing plays out. And I don't think we quite know where that's going yet. We have an idea. There's a few ideas I have, but I don't think there's a clear direction. I think they're cool for a decade.
Okay.
Amazon and Peacock are cool. And I say Peacock is cool because Comcast and NBC are their vanity plates for Comcast cable and internet. And not even so much their cable, but their internet service. They're one of the biggest internet services in America. And what's the backbone of all of this stuff? Internet service. What's a basic monopoly in most places around the country? Internet service.
Mhm.
You really only go one or two places. So when you own a market, you own a market, and you own it forever until you sell. So I think NBC and Peacock, they're going to be fine. They're going to be around, and as long as it's just a matter of how and how much that Comcast is going to want to invest.
When is our Gilded Age?
Amazon Video is not the main driver of their money. Their main driver is my Amazon Prime subscription and Amazon Electronics. And as long as they figure out, for them, it's just sort of, this is another thing to connect you to our universe.
It
And
might as well.
We're developing an audience so that we can sell you things.
Right. I mean, it might as well be a loss leader, even if it technically isn't. It's just to get you.
I think it is a loss leader. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Like I was watching this wrestling show. It was All Elite Wrestling's All In Texas. So I was at Dave & Buster's. I was watching this show, and it was live streamed on Amazon. And Amazon was selling you things every 5 minutes on this thing. There was a QR code, there was a URL on the screen to get you to buy things. And that's how they see TV and movies.
Okay.
They are buying you stuff. They're a vehicle to get you to buy stuff. It's they've always been that, but it's sort of this. That's how they roll.
Okay.
Apple's interesting. Apple doesn't need this, and they're just sort of like, they seem to be listless. If anything goes away, it's Apple. Apple. I think they could just sell Apple TV or just shut it down at any time, because they seem to have no real direction. Max. I think Max gets merged with something.
Okay.
They're in big financial trouble. They don't have their parent company just split itself in two, where they put all their they call it the shit co. So the all of the old depreciating assets, the cable TV stuff, in one bundle, and in the other bundle it's HBO, it's movies, and it's the streaming service. So and they are deep in debt. So my guess is that they will end up merging with somebody or being bought out, one way or another. Looking around, CBS is being bought. That's part of the Colbert story that I didn't go into. CBS is Donald Trump was suing CBS over the Kamala Harris.
Excuse me. It's Gumla.
Kamala. Over the edit of her 60 Minutes interview. And since he's president, he was putting his thumb on the scale to prevent their purchase from happening. So I do think they're going to end up probably sold again after this, but that's just a hypothetical. They're at least going to end up bought once. And the word on the street is that they're going to strip mine this thing. They're going to that this Colbert thing really wasn't a Trump deal. This was these new bosses are going to come in, and they're going to get rid of all the stuff, all of the vanity stuff, all the and we're going to just stick with the stuff that makes money.
Is that a good segue into FS1? Like
yes.
Because I'm curious how you.
Yeah.
You explained how the other two fit a bigger picture, but I'm curious.
Okay, so let's go here. Alrighty. And let me make it larger. Got to make it larger because Joy Taylor has to be quite big.
I love how she's the face. I love how she's the face of this whole.
All right, so FS1 cancels 3 weekday shows. Joy Taylor departs the network. I don't know if you want to read it.
According to Andrew Marchand of The Athletic, Fox Sports has canceled both Breakfast Ball and The Facility, which were added to the schedule to replace the canceled Skip Bayless vehicle Undisputed, as well as longer-running afternoon program Speak, featuring Joy Taylor, Paul Pierce, and Keyshawn Johnson. Taylor is said to no longer be with the company with the expiration of her contract. Last year, Taylor was accused in a broader 42-page lawsuit against Fox Sports and then executive Charlie Dixon of creating a hostile work environment. Taylor subsequently denied the allegations made against her. During a recent appearance on Power 105.1 FM's The Breakfast Club, they should have just said The Breakfast Club, she explained that they were, quote, in the process of things right now regarding her contract.
And the process was, all right. Okay. So once again, let's go back to the origins of this iteration of Fox Sports 1. You have Jamie Horowitz and Charlie Dixon, two ESPN executives, who took a kernel of ESPN, the Embrace Debate morning show, and they decided, okay, we're just going to do this all day, all night.
This is 2016, correct? Or 2015?
Earlier.
Okay, but, so at the time, that Embrace Debate model is doing runaway train success.
Yes, it was growing.
Yes, and they were able to grow it for years on FS1 too.
Yes, they were able to grow it for years on FS1. I think the trouble here was, once again, that was a last vestige of an archaic model.
Clearly, they didn't see that.
They didn't see it coming. Look, there is a lot of minutia with the FS1 stuff. Yes, there's this weird stuff that Charlie Dixon was sleeping with Joy Taylor, apparently.
Who was sleeping with Emmanuel Acho.
Apparently, and like there was all sorts of weird stuff with sexual harassment and all sorts of rumors. Go to Marcellus Wiley, go to Jason Whitlock to catch, the rotund one, Jason Whitlock, to go get the details on all that. But I think there's a larger thread that goes through all of this. This idea of a classic studio show with a big, crazy, large staffing it with pro cameramen, if I remember correctly, each one of these shows was said to have something around 30, 35 staffers to put together a program once a day. It's a model that technologically is archaic. B, it's on a cable network that's archaic.
Dying right before our eyes, isn't it? I mean, isn't it visibly hemorrhaging?
Without a doubt. Yeah. Totally. Like FS1, it's funny when I see people debating cable ratings, and it's hilarious because like if you're FS1 and you are in a quarter less homes than you were, 2 years ago, like how can you even compare the ratings? Like it's just like there's a quarter less possible viewers of your content. So I think you are. It is hemorrhaging homes that they are touching on a day-to-day basis, and instead of reinventing the wheel, what this guy Charlie Dixon was trying to do was lean in and create more cable TV stars, which is like, what the hell are you doing?
So you're saying even for 2015, that was outdated thinking?
Back then, we saw it coming.
Okay.
A lot of this was predicted by executives, even.
Okay.
Bob Iger over at ABC, Disney, ESPN. We saw, I believe it was right around then that we saw the tip of the ESPN homes, where for the first time in a long time they started to lose homes that they were in, as people like me moved to streaming. And I just wasn't watching ESPN proper. And when I did, I would come in for a football season and then I leave.
Mm-hmm.
Like once again, it's like the whole Netflix thing I was mentioning earlier. I'll watch the live sports, then the other stuff when I want to.
So ESPN still being the top dog in this, are they the top dog on a sinking ship?
Yes, that's why they're going over the top. So that's why they're going direct to consumer shortly. They are offering for the first time ESPN proper channel and all of its networks direct to you and me for a fee. Disney has spent so much on sports rights that it's hard for a football nut like me or an MMA nut like me to not watch ESPN. Fox has spent a lot on sports rights, but not sports rights on FS1.
Right. Yes. Right. FS1 is like a sports analyst analysis networks.
It is basically, and honestly, and they should start seeing themselves this way. And I mean, and them hiring Dave Portnoy, I think, is a start of this. Them seeing themselves this way. It is an all-day podcast network already. That's what it is. It's a series of highly produced sports podcasts.
Right, because a lot of that stuff was being viewed more online. Even at the height of Undisputed, was doing better numbers online with the little aggregated clips.
Yes, but put that aside for a moment.
Okay.
Just look at what they're actually doing. It's three guys in a room just babbling about sports. Like like the difference between that and what Colin Cowherd does on The Volume.
Right, in terms of its like basic structure, or not just Colin Cowherd.
Yeah,
what you can get in tons of lots of options now, and some of them very well done.
Yeah,
even without necessarily some of them have great production values. I'm talking about independent, totally. But some of them have great analysis and great production value. Some of them just have great analysis. Like you can get all sorts of. It's like 3,200 flavors out here at this point.
And you're at this point where you're spending, I think it was $3 million a year on Joy Taylor. Like what's going on? That made no sense. That spoke to a leadership that was still in the hey, I could create another Skip Bayless mindset. And I could create another Shannon Sharp mindset. Instead of like, oh, what's really happening on the landscape? And you know what it is? It's Dave Portnoy on Zoom with Kirk Minihane and Big Cat talking sports, getting the same size of an audience or more.
Way more.
So it's someone who is married to the past, or at least not just someone. I think it's an entire ecosystem.
Culture, the culture, right, ecosystem, yes.
That was expecting that all these old rules that PBS and NPR were expecting. They were expecting, hey, the government's just going to rain money every year. We're going to be okay. What Colbert and Kimmel and Fallon just say, oh yeah, it doesn't matter that we lose money every year. We've lost money every year for the last 20 years until it actually matters. All right. And in this case, it's like, oh, it's cable TV. It's just on in the background, and like that being on in the background is enough to make a bunch of money. No, not anymore. Not anymore. That's over. That's over. It's been over for a while. And what's happened is they've had enough of an inertia that's pushed them forward. And what happened with this whole Joy Taylor
You mean momentum?
thing,
I'm sorry. You mean momentum? Enough momentum that's pushed them forward? What do you mean inertia pushed them forward?
Meaning they've been moving toward this sort of larger idea. And I'm talking about philosophically. That, hey, like if we just put on a better show, that this is going to save us. When you are on the Titanic You can play like the best song ever, but you're still on the Titanic, bro.
I see what you mean. It's now I know what you're saying. It's on the Titanic, bro. Somebody meme JB. Somebody meme JB saying. Somebody needs to meme you saying that. You're still on the Titanic, bro. Right. Okay. So it's like the false illusion of momentum because you're sinking no matter what, but you're really scrambling to play the best song. What were you gonna say? You were gonna say what happened with Joy Taylor.
So what happened with Joy Taylor and this whole idea that, hey, yes, there's this sexual harassment. Yes, there's these lawsuits. And so, as you can see on the screen, those who are watching with us, and thank you for those who've stuck with us, the 19 with us at the moment. It looks like a few hundred from what I see totally in my stats here. What we, the idea that you could create cable TV stars and that you are competing for some, some level of cable TV stardom, and you get a big contract and you can just like eat the gravy train. You get the whole gravy train of the big cable contract is going to happen, and you can just sleep your way to the top. I'm sorry, Joy. It don't work that way no more. Because the apparatus itself is not enough. You got to be able to attract an audience. And hey, we have a very small audience here. Not a ton of people are going to see this. That's fine. I'd love it for it to be larger, but hey, it is what it is.
You're saying attracted audience through other means is what you're really getting at, right?
Yeah. Look, they have to want to hear what you got to say.
It's no longer. Sorry.
And part of that is being pretty. Look, she's very pretty. I won't even go into the Whitlock description, but she's very pretty, and I think she's okay as a broadcaster. I don't love her, but I think she does a good job sometimes. I thought that actually she was best at podcasting. She was better at podcasting than she was on set with broadcasting.
Which sort of is indicative of your whole. That's like a case in point of everything you're saying. That she was a mismanaged asset because they were still going under the assumption that this paradigm can grow talent the way it once or can grow stars the way it once did, and we can no longer use that plot of land to cultivate stardom.
You can have a star-making machine, and that's the interesting part about bringing in Barstool, because Barstool has become a star-making machine.
Right, but you have to co-opt it from elsewhere.
Call Her Daddy, Kirk Minahan, Portnoy himself, Pardon My Take, Wallow and Gilly. And it seems like every year they're cranking out another big star. But they're doing it through their system, but their system ain't cable TV.
Right.
And there are people who are doing this, they're cranking out stars, like the New York Times created their own system where they are taking their writers and finding ones with some on-air presence and developing them into digital stars.
Yeah, Ross do that.
That's one great example, right? Michael Barbaro, who does the Daily. Like Lulu Garcia Navarro, who was on NPR, she's now become one of the faces of their interview podcasts. They decided that, hey, look, just being doing interviews and putting together a great news article is no longer enough.
Mm-hmm.
The world has changed. And what all this stuff with FS1, and it has interesting and juicy, and I could talk about it for hours. Jason Whitlock has go see Whitlock.
Well, I was going to say when you mentioned Marcellus Wiley and Jason Whitlock, Marcellus Wiley is the sort of vegetable fritter or like fried green tomato take with a little bit of salt on it, and Whitlock's is the deep dish gossipy, like
Sure.
extra flavor. Marcellus is very like sort of clipped and matter of fact and entertaining. Whitlock is like just pour all the fucking sauce on there, like just guzzle, drench it in sauce. So whichever style you like, they've got you covered.
Sure. Yeah. And look, they are also creatures now
Yes.
of this new paradigm.
Who jumped off the old one, not necessarily from them forecasting. I mean, I'm sure to some degree they did.
But they were forced off, and they were forced to figure it out.
Well, I meant they weren't necessarily forecasting where things were going, but I think at some point they realized I can fucking just go this on my own, and although Whitlock's not entirely, he's the Blaze, which is also turned into a podcast.
Who are generating its own stars.
Right.
Its own universe.
So what happens after the podcast thing is no longer the... I mean, I'm asking you to predict a little ways. I still think we're a ways...
I think we are a ways away. I think the question is more the AI content versus podcast content.
Ooh,
and this sort of melding of AI content. Like I was playing around with this new... I saw this software. I was like, okay, what? I could clone myself? Like, okay. So I was like, all right, let's see it. Like I could, look, how do you do it? And this thing is already crazy.
We lost you for a second.
They didn't get my voice perfectly.
Can you back up a little bit?
My voice.
You said, all right, let's, because we lost you for a second, but you said, all right, let's.
Okay. All right, let's experiment. Like I because this is where we're going content wise. And I do think there's gonna I tried it. And I was like, they didn't get my voice perfect, but it's near perfect. They didn't get they got my physical body pretty perfect. Like, and I'm like, holy crap, this is where we are in 2025. What about 2026, 27?
Right. And it can also generate its own scripts, obviously, fairly reliably. I mean, it still needs some sort of hand-holding, but remarkably less than you would expect. So now we have JBGPT TV.
Yes. And I think that's what's coming. That's what's clearly coming.
That's going to blow all the podcasters.
Yeah.
Send them into the fucking,
And then on top of it, you got the boss at Netflix, Ted Sarandos, talking about how, like, oh yeah, we've already started to experiment with using software like Sora for special effects. They're already there. And they're like, and he's like, oh my God, like this is as good as most special effects houses in Hollywood.
Right. So the next thing is, do we end up with these major platforms using AI hosts?
Yes.
Is everybody going to be Stephen Colbert, even the podcasters?
I think it's quite possible that's where we're going. I think there will be just like I think there is a market for Stephen Colbert. I think there'll be a market for podcasters and anyone who is sort of going farm to table. But I think there's also going to be, AR avatar stars. I think I saw something, someone said this is not my idea, but I do think it's correct. Odds are, if you are on social media right now, you are following someone fake. You might not know it because some of these things are like just good, but you are likely following someone fake already. So I think what's going to happen is like you're going to end up with this parallel universe where you're going to have this sort of some people call it AI schlock right now. I think that's not giving it enough credit. I think we're going to end up with a bunch of AI generated content, and we're going to have a bunch of human generated content. And I think it's going to be a battle. I think that expertise and life experience will still matter and will help distinguish people. Hence, why I think someone like let's say Keyshawn Johnson, for example, like that guy's got deep experience with football that most people don't have, that no AI generated thing can produce. So I think there's going to be a market for a guy like that in the podcast digital world.
But you're saying a Joy Taylor who commentates.
What's the difference between her and some AI avatar?
So then maybe it's not going to be that long before this could the collapse of the podcast ecosystem, or the real human podcaster ecosystem, could be coming within just a handful of years. Because this could accelerate quite quickly, and it would have drastic consequences across all media. So maybe even we are the dinosaurs now, before we even get fat.
I think my gut says not entirely. But I do think it's going to be its own marketplace. I think there's going to be a market where people are creating their own avatar, and their own avatars are gonna be avatar stars.
Right. So I've thought of this, and I'm certainly not the only one, but this did occur to me in reverse because of having trouble finishing things and being inspired to write about or talk about or do videos on, to content create on a lot of different things, and just feeling limited by my own pace of that. And it's like, man, if there were a technology that could recreate me,
yeah, you'd use it.
Brand those almost as like licensed versions of myself, or for stars, people who are already legit stars.
Mm-hmm.
Like, couldn't, like, say a Dave Portnoy,
sure,
just straight up market Dave Portnoy bot that does things like him, but is just covering different stuff that he doesn't have time to get to, or the resources himself, and to some degree, couldn't we all engage in that?
Yeah, and I think you're going to end up with a Portnoy. Yes, I think we will all. Well, the smart ones of us will. I think Portnoy will. A guy like Portnoy will continue to do things like his pizza reviews, where it's him in reality, and the whole charm of it is him out in some random place where he will interact with people, and those people will, like it's people yelling El Prez, and it's a guy like me who I watch his pizza reviews a lot, and it's about the process of him being in this environment with these people, and the stories of these little mom and pop shops and all this stuff, that it's really charming. And then on the other side of it, I mean, if it's just analysis of random stuff, you can create an LLM based on
everything he said,
and you can get probably takes that are 95-ish% Portnoy,
or go the other way. Sorry, and probably
be able to generate that stuff. You could also
go the other way and exaggerate his. You could have the LLM be like a even more extreme unhinged, like turn the dial up and say things that even he himself wouldn't have said. That could be a thing,
without a doubt.
Too.
Without a doubt.
You and I should try that on ourselves.
And that'd be weird, but maybe happens. That
would be fucking cool, actually.
Well,
like totally no holds
unhinged
barred
version of James and Sabby,
right? Or in my case, it'd be more unhinged.
Yeah. And I do think having a content library also will end up being of much value, because like I could see a world where let's say I wanted to create my own Batman movie, and I pay Warner Brothers or some company that owns Warner Brothers, you know, a licensing fee to access the DC Comics characters to create my own personal world of where I can interact with these. I could totally see this
Of
kind of
course, I'm
thing
laughing
happening
because
around the corner.
of course, and we're not even getting into adult like porn.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that's probably going to happen too.
But the type of thing you're talking about, oh my God, that's a huge market where you're paying. It's like a subscription model to access a library, like you said, a content library, and you have licensing, and then that serves as promotion for the actual thing. Now, here's something scary and poetic that brings this full circle. What if all of us on the content creation train, which is so many people, which is like almost the majority of the world at this point, in terms of what you have said for years, that truism that we are all content creators, whether we know it or not, or whether we're intentionally, just having social media, we're creating content. Okay, so what if the growing number of people who are fashioning themselves as actual content creators, podcasters, YouTubers, whatever, what if that's the vestigial thing that's already on its way out, and we can all create AI avatars that are going to profit for us in our name, but the actual things we ourselves are doing we're just doing them because we're hanging on to this idea that that this has value to us. This has a certain intangible value. In other words, I could start an AI. I could use AI software to do like new agey manifestation videos and meditation videos, and that shit does huge numbers on YouTube as it is. I'm not saying I would necessarily succeed at it, but I could try to get into that and just let that do its thing. Meanwhile, my own actual YouTube, I'm one by one struggling to pick one potato out of the ground, one subscriber at a time. What if that's where we're going, where you just start something to work on your behalf while you sort of toil in obscurity, relative obscurity, and just sort of hand to mouth, farm to table, as you're saying, on a smaller scale?
Isn't that the dream?
Yes and no.
To make money while you're sleeping.
Yes, but yes and no. And again, bringing this totally full circle, like with any other innovation that works in the marketplace and takes over the marketplace, ultimately it either cuts its own legs off or something else comes and does it. So we need to be better at predicting where this is going and make a profit while we can. But then what does that do to the value of human-made interactions? Even not even art or content, just human interaction.
You could argue that it increases the value.
Okay, I like that.
That's why I think the farm to table thing will continue to exist. That there is sort of that. Yes, look, there's going to be all sorts of things, and you've alluded to a few of them. Whether it's the whole AI, you mentioned AI porn, and what they'll do with this kind of technology.
Make a lot of money.
I mentioned the whole thing with entertainment, and then there's a whole news thing. I think what will end up happening is this sort of world where we both end up enjoying that kind of content, but we have an awareness that it is fake. But we are leaning into it like we would a movie or a TV show, and probably on a deeper emotional level, I think, because I think, if Elon is actually going to be successful with building his freaking AI bots, like robots, walking around, it could be, some Westworld shit. but I think you'll end up with this combination of farm to table stuff and AI stuff, and maybe the AI stuff wins in the
or
end.
maybe,
I don't
maybe,
know. I don't. It's impossible
right,
to
or
know
maybe
now.
there's a delicate balance where AI stuff is the glut of the market, is the mass sort of McDonald's, and then the everything else just becomes even more niche. Because I mean, look, the example you gave, I think we are definitely headed towards uh, uh, a landscape where major movie studios and also franchises like Marvel and things like that. Oh my God, they why wouldn't they let people just create their own? Because then you're paying for a subscription licensing fee to their stuff, and then that promotes, like I said before, their main stuff. But I mean, people would do that in droves. Just think of all the parents who's like, oh, you like Bluey, or you like whatever, cartoon character, you like Paw Patrol, well, I'm going to make you a Paw Patrol where you're in it. Who wouldn't partake in that?
It's the Rebecca Blackification of all entertainment.
I don't know Rebecca Black. I don't know the reference.
Do you remember the hit Friday?
Yes.
It's
Oh yeah, yeah,
Friday,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
Friday. Gotta get down on Friday. Do you know how that came to be?
No.
Her parents paid this company to write a song for her and create a music video for her. She was just a 15-year-old kid. I think 14-year-old kid, one of them. And she had no musical talent, no nothing, that she just had a dream. Her parents were willing to pay for the thing to be produced, and it became a meme and
What
and a
year was
hit.
this?
I believe it was in, I want to say,
Okay.
08.
Wow, that's a long. That's a long-tailed harbinger of where things have been headed, isn't it? I mean, that's ahead of the curve, but on the cusp of what was already sort of gonna be inevitable. When you started singing the song, I thought you were singing a song from the movie for some reason, Friday. So I wasn't
Okay.
familiar with
No.
Rebecca
No.
Black.
No. So I do think that's where
Well,
we're
it's
headed.
Friday for Stephen Colbert, as in, he's about to face the weekend of his or maybe not. Maybe Stephen Colbert licenses himself to AI, and there's all sorts of Colbert bots. If he were smart, he would do that. He would partner with Chat GPT or whatever, and you could type in a question and it would answer you like Stephen Colbert.
Mm-hmm. What came when you said it's Friday, I was thinking Boys to Men, End of the Road.
Well,
so I've been playing Hurt.
Yeah, hats off to you. But I mean, you had to talk about this. This is like going to be a chapter in the media studies history of media. This will be one chapter in what happened.
Yeah, I gotta work on the book. Okay. All right. Savvy, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. No, you need JB GPT to start the book. I'm just joking.
Yeah. Sure.
We have to at some point talk about the entire AI. We have, but in terms of our personal use of it and but some other time.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, man. Feel better.